So good to have you with us on this Monday. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Great to be back with you this time. President Obama will deliver his final State of the Union address tomorrow night. We, of course, will carry it live. Republicans say they want Mr. Obama's address to be short and for him to renounce everything he's done for the last 7 years. The odds of that are similar to any one of us winning the billion-dollar Powerball. So what can we expect from the president and his critics in congressional leadership? Jerry Connolly joins us now, a Democrat. He represents much of Northern Virginia in the U.S. House. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Great to be back with you. Happy New Year to you, Bruce.
Thank you, and thanks very much for your time.
Sure.
What do you hope President Obama says? What do you hope his agenda for his last 12 months in office contains? You as a Democrat and someone whose district includes many federal employees.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure the president's going to look back on his presidency and wants to talk about legacy. I hope he'll start by reflecting on the economy he inherited and the economy where it is now. It's nothing short of a miracle, really. Very few presidents can claim the kind of economic progress this president has achieved. It was catastrophic when he took over. The economy was headed toward a Great Depression. The auto industry, the real estate industry, the banking industry were absolutely teetering on the brink. Unemployment in that first year got to 10.2%. It's now 5%. We've had 70 consecutive months of net positive job growth, the largest in American history ever, this president. We're the envy of the industrialized world in terms of our economic growth and in terms of our expansion. The real estate industry, the banking industry, the auto industry are all experiencing record years. They're not only thriving, they are at the peak in many cases of their history.
I'm just curious, what is the, I mean, not taking issue with the substance of what you say, but to the extent that history will be the judge, and he's got 12 months left still to get things done, what do you think is the political or other value in the sort of review? I mean, because this is the ultimate stage for a president to have, of course,
right.
The State of the Union address.
Well, I think he needs to lay down a marker to remind people of what he's accomplished on the economic front, because we continue to hear a lot of chatter about, well, the economy really is kind of lackluster and anemic. Actually, no, it's not. And from where we came, this man deserves a great deal of credit. And let's remember, he's more than half that room he'll be addressing tomorrow night voted against every single one of those measures. They would have allowed the economy to go right off a cliff. And I think he deserves credit and should take it because this was, except for the Great Depression, the single worst economic recession in modern times. I think obviously he's got to lay out his vision on a host of issues: terrorism, cybersecurity threats. Obviously he's talked recently about gun control and the measures he's taken to try to protect the American public.
Are we in a political environment now where if the other team is for it, we are against it? I mean, was that something where Democrats in Congress had a knee-jerk, no response to anything George W. Bush proposed? And do you agree with the president that the Republican leadership in Congress right now is against anything he is for because he is for it?
Well, your first question, are we now at a point where that seems to be the dynamic? I would say yes, unfortunately. I don't agree with the characterization that Democrats didn't cooperate with George W. Bush. When you look at the economic collapse that occurred on his watch in the early fall of 2008, Democrats were in the White House cooperating with him and then Secretary of Treasury Hank Paulson in trying to remediate and prevent the complete collapse of the economy. And that's a level of cooperation, sadly, we have not seen from Republicans with this president.
Why do you think the level of hate, if that's what it is so strong?
I think it's irrational because actually this is not a particularly polarizing individual. President Obama is very almost tutorial and cerebral. He's not somebody who is demagogic or fans the flames, the reaction to him, it seems to me, is hard to explain. But it's also harmed the country. You look right here in Virginia, to your point, we're not expanding Medicaid, and it's just because they don't like President Obama and they don't want to empower his signature issue on health care reform. And so 400,000 Virginian citizens continue to go without health care to make a political point. And I think that's tragic, really, for the country.
What else do you expect him to talk about? What else do you hope he talks about? He's attempting to take action on the proliferation of guns and the nation's gun violence epidemic. There's ISIS out there. We just had a police officer shot in Philadelphia in a cold-blooded, point-blank range execution, where there is the suggestion that some sort of overseas inspiration may have provoked this heinous act. There is immigration. To what extent, even with this Congress, does he have a chance to get stuff done in these 12 months?
Well, let's remember, in the waning days of the first session of this Congress, we got a lot done on a bipartisan basis with his help. So we got a trade process agreed to. We got a transportation bill finally done. We got a doc fix for Medicare done. We got a 2-year budget. We funded the government. We raised the debt ceiling. So all of that was done on a bipartisan basis with cooperation from the White House, very actively involved. So, of course, things can get done, and they can get done this year. He's going to lay out the very vision I think you just laid out, Bruce. I mean, he's going to talk about, first of all, how do I protect the country? How are we protecting the country? And both here and abroad. How do we take the fight to ISIS? How big a threat is ISIS to the homeland? I think he has to talk about other issues as well in terms of legacy issues. He's going to have to talk, about how well are we doing on the health care reform. 11 million people signed up. That's a lot of people. It has significantly reduced the cost curve. It has significantly reduced the number of uninsured in America. We still have progress to make, but that's a pretty big achievement that has eluded most of his predecessors. I think he is going to have to talk about unfinished business, comprehensive immigration reform, fix a broken system. And I think he will talk about guns. He was at George Mason University the other day, laid out a very reasonable agenda for what has to be done to protect the public without encroaching on anyone's rights. And I think he's going to probably revisit that tomorrow night.
Do you think there is a gap between what would be not just our response to ISIS, but the West's response to ISIS broadly? Is there a gap between what the ideal plan would be and what the American people are willing to support, even now, after San Bernardino, Paris, what happened in Philadelphia? Not to say there's an ISIS connection there, but something maybe. Let me just stop with that question. Is there a gap between what the ideal response would be and what the American people are willing to accept in terms of risk, sacrifice, and cost?
I think that's a really good point. We sometimes applaud rhetoric. I've heard some of the Republican candidates for president, we're just going to bomb them and solve the problem. By God, elect me and it will all be over in a minute. Obviously, reality on the ground is not that simple. You've got to be deeply concerned about civilian casualties as you undertake any kind of military mission. The public's tolerance for the boots on the ground is very limited. We're war weary after the 2 longest wars in our history, Afghanistan and Iraq. So the idea that we would get involved in yet another Middle East mission that would involve U.S. casualties and troops on the ground, I think the public understandably is very wary of that. And I think a lot of critics of the president conveniently ignore that as part of their answer. I think the president has chosen a middle way, and there are a lot of things underway that I think over time will probably have positive results. But this is a long-term venture. There are no easy solutions. Our leverage in Syria particularly is limited, and bringing others to the table to cooperate, a difficult and tricky business.
Is this, as someone recently here on the show described it, is this World War III? Is this something where we really need to hunker down and be prepared for something just awful and challenging?
I don't think it's World War III. I don't think the magnitude of it begins to encompass something like that. But I do think your latter point is one that is worth highlighting, and that is this is not going to go away anytime soon. This is a long-term proposition and investment on our part. The American people have been willing to do that in the past. The Cold War is a great example. We did it for almost 60 years, and we stuck with it, and we prevailed. Now, hopefully this won't take 60 years, but it's not going to take 6 days or 6 weeks.
Talking with Northern Virginia Congressman Jerry Connolly. We'll take a quick break here. Back, though, with more News Talk right after this.